It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980, where you see the very well-dressed Matt Miller from ESPN with us.
I will be in a T-shirt and joggers as soon as possible, but I appreciate it. My wife picked this out.
So she did a great job.
I give her a shout-out.
Excellent. Well, you are on television now.
Yeah, it's a different game. You know, you got to always be ready.
Do you miss the days of just be like, no, I'm a blogger who puts out a massive draft guide and I occasionally would do some podcasts?
I'll be very honest with you. I miss the ability to like go out until 4 a.m. at these events and then like not have to wake up and be on TV the next day because like there's so much good information that happens once you get, some drinks flowing at night, and that's when everybody likes to talk and you can some of my lifelong friends I've met at like the JW, high velocity at 3 a.m. That has changed a little bit. I do miss it, but I'm very, very grateful for, the opportunities.
They probably still call you now that you got the fancy suit. So
that helps.
And that's because your wife picked it out and she did a great job.
It's the 4 letters after your name.
Yeah,
really
I've heard those are good
things.
for you.
Yeah,
I've heard those
helps.
are good for you. All right, Matt, of course, ESPN NFL draft analyst, and you, like everyone else that has been on my show today that does mock drafts, all of a sudden has Drake Maye going number 2 to Washington. Now, when we talked in December, it's a completely different kind of setup because they hadn't fired Rivera yet, nevertheless hired DQ and Kliff Kingsbury. We didn't know they were going to be at the number 2 pick at the time. I think you were mocking them, Jayden Daniels, at like 3 or 4.
Yep.
But why ultimately, as of now, going into Combine Week, and I think your last mock actually was coming out of Super Bowl
week.
What makes you think Drake Maye is the right fit?
So I have good news for you. If I were to redo that mock draft today, I would not have Drake Maye there.
Oh.
Because of the Kliff Kingsbury hire. And I know, I'm sure a lot of people have said to you, like, no, Kliff and Drake, sure they could work together. Yeah. But, man, I remember Kliff getting hired by the Arizona Cardinals, which was a shock of a move, right?
Right.
And he put his job on the line to draft Kyler Murray first overall, 1 year after they had traded up to draft Josh Rosen. And so I look at Kyler and think, like, that's a tall Jayden Daniels. Kyler is a lot like Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
So I think that running element is really important to Kliff. Now, obviously, Drake is a good mover as well. But if I were doing a mock draft today, I would put Jayden Daniels there. I'm an enormous Jayden Daniels fan. He's my number 5 overall player. He's my number 2 quarterback. Put a big old grade on him when we did our scouting reports. I don't know that the Commanders can go wrong with either guy, but I think Jaden is the better quarterback prospect.
So I wound up diving into Drake a bunch today because a bunch of people like Drake better. So let's dive into Jaden because I think he's a fascinating fit with Washington because he does the thing well and has done a lot of it that I think a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL are scared of and that Kliff Kingsbury likes to do a lot. He throws outside the numbers.
All the time.
He has 2 studs at LSU that make that a lot easier. But how does that translate when because everyone talks about, he doesn't throw over the middle a ton. When you look at his kind of, in basketball we call it a shot diet, his throw diet, how do you try to translate that to the NFL level?
Well, I think that's where, so he's the best deep ball thrower in this draft. Whether you mean like that statistically he is, or just me and you watching football, I would say, it's the best deep ball thrower in the draft. The NFL right now is trying to take that away with split safeties and everything's over the top. So I think what Jaden does well to beat that is he throws on time really, really well. That's how he had the success as a deep ball thrower. It's not just, 1, 2, 3, throw it to Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors. It's being able to layer the ball. And you can do that intermediately just as well as you can do it on a deep pass. I think, you talk about a shot diet. Break it down into your tiers, 20 plus, 11 to 20, 5 to 11, like he's one of the best at every one of those. And so I talked to an NFL general manager last week. That's what he said. He was like, man, we want to attack the perimeter. That's where the game is going. We need to attack the perimeter and then have the weapons who can create. And the Commanders have those weapons. You have Terry McLaurin. You have Jahan Dotson. You just need the guy who can layer the ball in there and give those players room to run. If you watch Jayden Daniels throw to Malik Neighbors, that's what they did consistently.
Matt Miller, ESPN, is with us. So coming up at 6 o'clock, we have a roundtable discussion that we recorded earlier in the day with your colleague, Brooke Pryor, and Ben Solak. And Ben brought this really cool kind of discussion point to our roundtable about the power of the scramble and why it is quickly, amongst the people that are paying attention to the kind of underlying analytics, one of the most valuable things in the sport. The scramble is arguably more valuable than any other type of play a quarterback can make.
Yeah.
How does that, one, has that played into how you evaluate? And 2, what does that tell you about these top 3 quarterbacks, which all have some scramble ability?
Yeah, it has, man. I call it the Mahomes rule. And I know the Raiders have theirs. Mine's very different because mine is that dude changed how I evaluate quarterbacks. When Mahomes came out in 2017, it was like he doesn't, there wasn't even, no one even said off schedule Like, that wasn't even a thing yet in 2017. So with Mahomes, he's changed that. And now you have to be able to play off schedule, which is what Ben is talking about. And you have to be able to do things like Patrick did on that, was it third down play in the Super Bowl where it's like, oh, wait, there's a gap. I'm going to go get 8-9 yards and we're going to win the game. You have to have that. And so I think that's where from Patrick on, and now we have in this draft, the first 5 quarterbacks who are going to be drafted can all move and can all extend plays and create. And so, yeah, it is absolutely changed how I evaluate. It used to be pocket quarterbacks. It's can you 1, 2, 3 throw, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 throw. Now it's okay. Well, when the first option's not there, can you keep things going? Because offensive line play has gotten so bad. You have to have that guy that can move around and create on his own. Otherwise, you're a sitting duck back there.
So offensive line used to be one of the easier evaluations. How hard has it become as you have these non-NFL offenses that have proliferated in college football?
It's really, really difficult unless you watch like Notre Dame or Michigan, because everything's RPO, everything's get the ball out to the perimeter, and we're going to find a college corner who can't tackle, and we're just going to throw at him on slip screens all the time, right? So it's made it tough because not a lot of guys are doing, what analytically you would say like a true pass block set. There's not a lot of that anymore. So it does make it difficult, but I think it's why, Notre Dame's Joe Alt, Penn State's Olu Fashanu, Oregon State's Talise Fuaga. That's why they're being elevated as prospects because, oh, yeah, we've seen you do it. We know exactly what we're getting. It's not as much of a projection, which is where, you get into like a Mekhi Becton situation of, oh, wow, this guy moves really well and he's violent and aggressive, but the things he's doing aren't really what we're doing in the NFL.
This just sparked a whole separate thought in my head, so I'm going to ask you about it as a guy who does this year-round. Do you spend part of your year then going back and being like, all right, I now have 4 years worth of what are we in, 2024? Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Matt, do you know it's 2024? That is bizarre. The 2020 draft class, we have 4 years of them. I want to go back and watch the college tape and see what they became as pros and like try to figure out what dots are connecting or not connecting.
Yeah.
And are there any positions where that is becoming easier or harder as the game changes?
You have to self-scout. And especially, I work with a lot of amazing people at ESPN, but you're still a one-man or one-person scouting department. So you want to get better. You want to see if there are holes in your game. Just like with the Mahomes stuff. The game changes. You have to stay on top of that. And so, yeah, I think you always want to. Or when you see a guy become an all-pro in the NFL, you go back and like, okay, where did I have him ranked? Or what did my scouting report say about him? Because sometimes that's more important. To go back and read the scouting report and say like, okay, yeah, I feel pretty good about that. Or, oh, man, like why?
Maybe I had it all there. I just emphasized the wrong part.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's a really, really important part of it, especially as the game changes in the NFL. Is to stay on top of that is big.
All right, back to this year's draft. If you are the Commanders and you have pick 36 and 40, is there a player, a pair of players that you're like, please God, let them fall.
Yeah.
Let them be there.
I think so. You're going quarterback at 2. I think at 36 and 40, I'm looking at offensive line, like a guy like Graham Barton from Duke, who could probably play inside day one, be a really, really good player on the inside. But I think like what's getting slept on with Washington is you traded your 2 first-round pass rushers, and you can make an argument like,
well, it's not being slept on in Washington.
Okay, good. It shouldn't be. I think nationally it's been slept on.
Yeah.
And so I look like Chop Robinson from Penn State, who's going to test so well here, and I think fits what Dan Quinn wants to do. With some of that outside speed. Put him in a 7 or a 9 technique and just let him go get the quarterback. So I think defensive end is something where we're going to have some talent in round 2, but I think that's a must get with one of those second-round picks.
You think Darius Robinson falls that far?
No, sorry. It'd be great, man. The Senior Bowl ended that. At the Senior Bowl, Daniel Jeremiah and I were talking before the first practice, and he's like, oh, yeah, you're a Missouri guy. Where do you have Darius Robinson? And I was like, I think I have him at like 40, and he was like, yeah, I have him at like 32, and now it's like, yeah, nope, he's not going to be there for either of those.
Seems to be
move him way on up.
Everyone fell in love with him at the Senior Bowl, and that's bad because that includes, I think, a lot of us in D.C. All right, I will wrap up with this, the same question that I asked your colleague Jordan Reed earlier. Who is your absolute, forget where they're going to get drafted, forget the value, whatever. Who's your favorite player in this draft?
Oh, man, Rome Odunze is like the guy that I can just watch over and over again. He's going to get drafted early. So, Junior Colson, the linebacker from Michigan, and I'm not like a big linebacker guy. I just love the way he plays. And he's got like a cast on one hand, and he's still like running down making plays. So those are the 2 guys that, you kind of forget your scouting sometimes, and you just become a fan again, and you just watch them because they're so much fun to watch.
Yeah, Colson's a guy that I think could be interesting for Washington in a later round. So he's a name that's come up actually a couple times today. Matt Miller, you can watch him on all of ESPN's draft coverage, which is plentiful, not only from here in Indianapolis for the scouting combine, but all the way leading up to the draft in April. What days are you on the desk this year?
Day 3.
Okay.
That's 2 months away, but I know day 3. I'm studying. I'm preparing.
You're taking it day by day?
Yeah. I mean, that's like 160 players that you got to be ready for. So hydrating.
That's good.
Getting the vocal cords ready.
I took a week off last week because I needed it, and I did my first show back yesterday, and I forgot that you actually build up the muscle of talking that much. Did a terrible job of hydrating. Also bad today, so I think I'm going to go take a sip of water.
You should, yeah.
I got to go find some water somewhere. Absolutely. You have a water bottle. I'm going to go find one. It's Matt Miller, everybody, with us here on The Hoffman Show.
This is The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.